A mainstream outlet has just kicked a hornet's nest, taking direct aim at the claims of mass rape by Hamas on October 7th and finding no evidence to back those claims. No surprise, a massive backlash has already begun, so let's take some time to dig into this one. So as you may know, following October 7th, the Israeli government pushed a series of invented atrocities in order to justify a military campaign filled with unjustifiable horrors. Wasn't enough that Hamas had wantonly murdered civilians, including young partygoers at a desert rave. The Israeli government and its American accomplices needed more graphic visual imagery that could persuade the world that Gaza was filled with inhuman monsters who must be wiped off the face of the earth. We heard gruesome stories of 40 beheaded babies. In actuality, one baby was horrifically killed on October 7th. None were beheaded. Another baby, we were told, was baked in an oven, also completely false. We were told a pregnant woman had a fetus cut out of her. That was also untrue. And that volunteers had seen bodies piled up in a pyramid. Once again, false. But nothing has been as persistent or as politically charged as the oft-repeated allegation that Hamas used rape systematically on October 7th as a weapon of war. This allegation has been embraced in polite society as an ironclad fact and one which should never be questioned. It was the subject of an Israeli government social media campaign, #BelieveIsraeliWomen, subject of a Sheryl Sandberg documentary, a UN report, a now discredited but hugely hyped New York Times investigation, and even a congressional resolution which claimed Israeli police had evidence of, quote, countless instances of rape, gang rape, sexual mutilation, and other forms of sexual violence. Media elites, current political figures, including Joe Biden, and past political figures like Hillary Clinton, all repeated the claim that not only did sexual assault occur on October 7th, but that it was widespread and directed from the top down.
Now, let me be clear. Hamas using rape, sexual violence, and terrorism and torture of Israeli women and girls is appalling and unforgivable. And you should, when I was there, saw some of the photographs. It's beyond comprehension.
We had two events last week. We had 3 panels about Ukraine, and they were superb. They went off without a hitch. We learned a lot and were challenged. 2 days later, we had panels on conflict-related sexual violence. It included Ukraine, Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Israel. And it was protested. You just have to ask yourself how you could have an event focused on using rape as a tactic of war against women and girls, which is in conflict across the world, and you include the most recent horrendous example out of Israel, and that brings out the protesters. So there is an invidious strain of anti-Semitism that has never gone away, but we had hopes. It had been certainly submerged, that has been poking its head up for quite some time now.
15,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes, 3/4 of whom are women and children.
And it's horrible, but you don't see Israeli soldiers raping
well, Dana, I
Palestinian
think
women.
we're not...
I could probably do entire monologues about each of those clips, but the last one with Dana Bash really gives up the game. Sure, Palestinians getting killed, it's terrible, but at least they aren't getting raped like Israeli women. She uses the mass rape claims to dismiss in real time the horrors of Palestinians, which of course is the whole reason why these claims were marketed so aggressively by the Israeli government to begin with. But from the beginning, there were some brave voices out there asking for evidence that just had not yet been produced. Electronic Intifada, The Gray Zone, Z-Squirrel, The Intercept, and many more began looking critically at the reports, pointing out where narratives collapsed, evidence was lacking, or stories were ever shifting. All of these attempts at actual journalism, as opposed to just writing up whatever government spokesperson wants you to say, all of these were roundly smeared. The individuals involved were personally attacked as pro-Hamas rape apologists. Brianna Joy Gray was just fired from the Hill because of her willingness to question this narrative. Well, now, a mainstream outlet, the Times of London, has conducted an investigation into those mass rape allegations in an attempt to sort fact from fiction. And while, listen, there are some parts I could take some issue with, I still really highly recommend it. The piece is very sympathetic to Israeli perspectives, even to the ultra-religious Zaka volunteers whose lies formed a core of the mass rape evidence and other atrocity fictions as well. But ultimately, Times of London concludes the bottom line is this: there is no forensic evidence of rape. There is no video evidence of October 7th rape. The government of Israel claimed they had evidence of thousands of sexual assaults. They have produced zero evidence to support a single claim. Here is the report, quote, "To this date, police have not interviewed a single survivor. On December 24, the police issued a decree to hospitals ordering them to hand over accounts of any rape survivor who had sought treatment. On January 4th, the police put out a fresh appeal for witnesses, saying they had succeeded in interviewing just 3 and had been unable to match their accounts with the bodies collected from the massacre site." The Times of London also discusses the lack of evidence in the UN report compiled by Pramila Patten. Quote, "In all the Hamas video footage Patten's team had watched and all the photographs they had seen, there were no depictions of rape. We hired a leading Israeli dark web researcher to look for evidence of those images, including footage deleted from public sources. None could be found." They also detail how the rape claims were obsessed over and politically weaponized in a way that actually was damaging to other survivors. After 300,000 people marched in London to protest the ongoing genocide, an Israeli government spokesperson smeared them all as rape apologists. What's more, the quest to prove the mass rape narrative erased the focus on other horrific trauma and atrocities that were meted out on that day. Dr. Ruth Plonsker, a senior psychologist with non-governmental organization Safeheart, believes the focus on sexual violence has been unhelpful for Nova Festival survivors wrestling with their trauma. She said, "I don't think there were a lot of sexual assaults. There was a lot of murder. That's what happened there. People were hiding and watching very horrible things." She's skeptical that political leaders have the victims' interest in mind. Quote, "Therapists are interested in the victims and the survivors. I think politicians are interested in the image of Israel." The head of an Israeli rape crisis center told the Times of London she was disgusted by the way the rape allegations had been politicized. Quote, "On October 11th, the Foreign Ministry launched a campaign under the hashtag Believe Israeli Women. I did not think that was sensible," she said. "They didn't mean believe Israeli women. They meant believe Israel." Now, the article did not conclude that no rape had occurred and left open the possibility that mass systematic rape had indeed been part of the Hamas October 7th attack, but simply pointed out what is inescapable at this point. As of now, there is no evidence to back those claims. Now, naturally, the backlash has been both swift and very revealing. Those 3 Israeli experts that were interviewed for the piece wrote a joint response claiming their words had been, quote, "misrepresented, twisted, and cynically exploited." One can only imagine what pressure these experts are under in Israel itself. Notably, though, they don't actually dispute any of the facts from the piece, nor do they specify these supposed misrepresentations or directly claim that they were actually misquoted. It's all left very vague. Nonetheless, this response has fueled calls for the Times of London to apologize or even to retract the report entirely. Needless to say, that would be a strange thing to do, given that no error has actually been revealed. Meanwhile, however, the New York Times has published an explosive new report that does detail sexual assault used as a tool of war in a systematic way with actual evidence to back it up. But you probably didn't hear about that report because it was about Palestinian prisoners being tortured and sodomized by their Israeli captors. In a lengthy investigation into abuse of Palestinians at an Israeli military base turned prison, they write that Palestinians were subjected to brutal beatings, electric shocks, intentional degradation, including being forced to wear only diapers, and sexual assault. Quote, "Mr. Al-Hamlawi, the senior nurse, said a female officer had ordered 2 soldiers to lift him up and press his rectum against a metal stick that was fixed to the ground. He said the stick penetrated his rectum for roughly 5 seconds, causing it to bleed and leaving him with unbearable pain." A leaked draft of the UNRWA report detailed an interview that gave a similar account. It cited a 41-year-old detainee who said that interrogators, quote, made me sit on something like a hot metal stick and it felt like fire, and also said that another detainee died after they put the electric stick up his anus. But there will be no congressional resolutions about these assaults, no Sheryl Sandberg film, no convenings with Hillary Clinton to discuss why we should hashtag believe Palestinian men. Because Bibi and Biden, they never cared about human rights or protection from sexual assault. Hell, they don't even actually care about Israeli women since they're content to continue to let hostages languish in Gaza with no ceasefire deal. They care about cynical emotional manipulation for their own political ends and to justify their own atrocities. Just a couple of dudes who couldn't care less about violence against women using fake feminism to justify a genocide. At least one outlet is no longer falling for the ruse. And Saagar, we mentioned this in the show
Hey
yesterday.
guys, if you want to see what I had to say to Krystal's monologue, not just this one, all of them, going back to the very beginning, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com.